I would never encourage anybody in their 20s to get married. Okay, I'm saying that on this podcast. If you are in your 20s, wait, baby.
Raise a glass to the past, present, and future you with actress Danielle Truitt as she dives into the beautiful complexities of life's journey through real, transparent conversation. All the women I've been made me into.
Hey y'all, welcome back to All the Women I've Been. We are back with another podcast episode for you. I am Danielle Truitt. If you don't know who I am, if this is your first time tuning in to the podcast, welcome. I hope that you come here and receive some great encouragement and inspiration. And I really hope that you are able to just relax, ease into your life, and accept all the different versions of yourself that you are. That's what this podcast is really about. It's really about acceptance. It's really about seeing who you are, loving who you are, all the different facets of who you are, whether it's beautiful, ugly, confused. This is the place to come and just be encouraged that it's okay. So today I'm really happy to welcome back a very special person in my life. Her name is Rhea Michelle Williams, and she is one of my best friends. And if you tuned into the podcast before, you may have seen a previous episode with her in it. But yeah, welcome. And we're going to get started. Well, welcome back, sister. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad we get to do two of these together.
I know. Thank you for having me back.
We have so many good conversations just in our regular lives, which is almost every other day.
Yeah.
Just because we have a front row in each other's lives. Mm-hmm. So I have really been looking forward to having you on the podcast. So thank you for giving me two.
Oh man, listen, what the people don't know, Danielle, first of all, if I can just affirm you, I'm so proud of you. This was an idea that dropped into your mind, and many people don't have that kind of faith to just move on it. And I felt, because we pray together every day, I felt immediately, yep, that's it. So it's such an honor to be here, and I'm just so proud to see all the evolutions and the different creative ways that you have been used to bless the people.
Thank you, girlfriend.
You're welcome,
I appreciate it.
Period.
We talked about this briefly the other day, but I definitely feel like it's a part of what God started in us a long time ago when we had the gate called Beautiful.
We did.
And life has changed. We've evolved as people. We've gone through things,
Yeah.
And it's just a different time in life,
Yeah.
And so I think this is just an extension of like what God started back then,
which was the women's ministry. It was a women's
ministry called The Gate Called Beautiful, and it was pretty dynamic. Mm-hmm. And so I think He's still doing that work through us. You know? Yeah. For those that don't know, Rhea Michelle Williams. She's writing a book.
I am.
She is going to be a talk show host one day. She was recently on the Today Show. Yay, she's been on the Jay Hood Show.
Thank you.
If you watched the last episode that she was on, you heard the gems that she dropped. So I'm happy that you're here and that we're still doing ministry together in a different kind of way.
It's a new season.
Yeah.
A new way to touch the people. So I'm happy to be here.
So cool. So today we are going to talk about marriage and divorce. Okay.
Bartender. Fill me up.
Right. And neither one of us drinking, but it's going to be
right now.
Because after this is over, we might
maybe,
perhaps a little glass of wine.
Period.
But it's funny. When we first became friends, we were in completely different seasons in our lives. I was, married, having kids. You were single, traveling the world, dating, stuff like that. And now we are both divorced. And so we're in similar kind of seasons.
Sure.
So it's, it's very interesting. And I think it's a part of what kind of helped us reconcile our friendship. And I'm just excited to talk about it. I don't know what's gonna come out. We don't talk about these we know the topic, but we don't
Uncomfortable
talk about these
conversations.
uncomfortable conversations before we do them. And that's what this podcast is for.
Yeah.
You know, it's to talk about things and to be real and raw and to just share from an authentic place and to know that it's okay. And there's more people out there that have experienced what you've experienced than people that haven't.
Yeah, that's definitely my brand. Anything I do is like show up as who you are and speak your truth.
Yeah,
so
that's
I'm
what
grateful we share that.
That's what I'm learning. So yeah, I guess we can start. There's a famous movie by Tyler Perry called "Why Did I Get Married?"
And two.
Yeah, right, 1 and 2. Okay,
Shout out.
So we're just gonna talk a little bit about marriage, why we got married. You know, kind of our journey to marriage. I guess I can start.
Please.
You know, I've said this before in the podcast, you know, I wasn't that girl that was like, oh my God, I can't wait to get married, you know, dreaming about it, planning my wedding in advance. That kind of wasn't me. I think my parents have been married now for 43 years. I've seen them go through their ups and downs, but I've seen them stick it out. They're still together, and there's a lot of beauty in that relationship. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of always knew I would get married. You know, it wasn't something, I never second guessed it. You know, I was like, oh, I'll get married one day and have kids. And when I turned 25, I remember being like, oh my God, I'm almost 30. I'm getting old. I guess I better like start getting serious if I want to get married and have kids, which is so funny to me now. Cause I'm like, bitch, you was only 25.
Which is very young.
That's so good. Like I would never encourage anybody in their 20s to get married. Okay, I'm saying that on this podcast. If you are in your 20s, wait, baby. Okay, just wait till your 30s. But I did, and you know, thank God I got my babies, and it's all good. I learned so much. I grew in so many ways. There was definitely things I gleaned from in my marriage that I still have with me today. So it's not something I regret. Mm-hmm. But it definitely wasn't something I was looking to do. And I moved to LA to pursue my acting career. And I reconnected with my high school sweetheart. Mm-hmm. And I think at that time in my life, it was I was taking a leap of faith for my career, but it was also very scary. You know, I only had a certain little amount of money that I had saved up. Being from Sacramento, I knew LA was expensive, but I didn't really have a hold on what it really took to live there. And I was definitely proud of myself. You know, I was doing theater in Sac. I saved up I think I saved up probably $4,000 on my own. Yes, and then I did like a whole concert, you know, where people donated to me. I didn't know I was a little producer in training back then. I had no idea that was like a part of my gift, you know. Sure. But I produced my little show and made another $3,000. So I felt like I had some money when I got to LA, and quickly in about 2-3 months that it was gone. But but when I first got to LA, you know, I reached out to my ex-boyfriend at that time, because I wanted a church home. You know, church is a big part of my life. And so he told me about his church, and then we became, you know, started to build a friendship again. And next thing I knew, a year later, I was getting married, you know. And I think, you know, I remember we fasted for 3 days, I think, to ask the Lord to speak to us about whether we should get married or not. And at the end of the 3 days, when I prayed about, you know, should I marry him or not, I just heard the Lord say, you choose. Mm-hmm. That is what he said. It's your choice. Mm-hmm. He didn't say, yes, you should marry this person. He just said, it's your choice. And he put the ball in my court, and I made my choice, you know. And now being older and wiser, I know that I think it was a necessary experience for me. Like I said, there were ways that I grew and matured in ways in that season of my life that I'm happy, you know, that I got to experience those things. I have my children. And I think me and Kelvin, my ex-husband, we were able to kind of grow up a little bit more together. And it didn't work out, but I definitely don't regret it.
Yeah.
I do see now that the reason I got married is because I was looking for safety. I think I've been looking for safety my entire life, with how I grew up and just things not being stable a lot of times. I was looking for someone to protect me, and to be safe. And I feel like he had those qualities that I was looking for. Now, when I look back, I think I would have been okay, if I didn't get married, or just took a longer time, before I did. But I did, and I think the reason I did is because I was looking for protection. I was looking for safety and stability, and he exemplified those things for me at that time. So that's my reason.
I love
Why
that.
did you get married?
Oh boy, let me try to make it brief. So I think one thing I know is I got married later in life. I didn't get married until I was 39. I think as a Black woman, as a Christian, and I think a lot of us are just socialized to believe that marriage is the pinnacle, that is the way. And I wasn't unhappy. I was such a hustler. I was just working. I also never really envisioned and dreamed. I had friends that dreamed at 4 and 5 years old of what their wedding.
Yeah.
Never. I was never that. My parents were twice and 3 times divorced. So my dad was married 3 times. My mom was married twice. They got divorced. So it wasn't really modeled for me.
Right.
But when I did find, and being a part of the church, I got, saved, when I was in my 20s, and being so heavily swept into the church community, that messaging was very heavy, because then it becomes, well, you gotta get married so you don't be in sin.
Right.
And it just, it really put me in a position. I still didn't feel the pressure, but I almost felt like then people start praying for me. We believe in God for your husband. And I'm very much, I stand, 4 flats down in who I am. But I knew that I had dated a lot. I dated, honey. I had me some boyfriends. But I loved, my ex-husband. I loved him. I believed in him. But I did not really know, and we didn't. He used to say it all the time, like, we didn't know what we were doing. True, hence why. You were right. I'll tell you were right. But the truth that I think people don't talk about a lot is the individual soul work and the healing you have to do in yourself to sustain marriage. People think, oh yeah, you get married and you just stick it out. Well, yeah, but I think there needs to be I got married because I desired partnership. Yeah. And like I said, I thought love and belief was enough. And it just wasn't. And by the grace of God, by the grace of God, which I will say, we've talked about this. One thing I will never, and we divorced with grace. Yeah. But throughout our relationship, we did pray together every day. And we both were flawed. We definitely were both flawed. But the fact that we had something that anchored us, I think, is what allowed us to to divorce with grace. Like we don't bash each other. It just, I honestly, and look, we didn't say this earlier, but I'm a life and relationship coach by trade, was a therapist for many, many years. Yeah. People get married for the wrong reasons. Yes. So if you do anything in life for the wrong reason, it's not sustainable. It's not gonna work. Someone's going to be hiding. Yep. There's going to be a misalignment. Some people can lay their heads down at night and not be happy. That wasn't me. Right. So that's kind of, I own it, and I don't regret it at all. Yeah. I don't regret it at all.
Yeah, I think the part about the church, I think, is a huge part for those who are Christian. Yeah. There is, I think we don't know how to date. I think in church it's not taught. It's not really encouraged at all. Like the singleness in church is more about judgment. Judgment, and you better not have sex. And
it's too much.
And of course, when you're single, there's a devotion to God that you definitely should have, because you don't have a partner that you have to put this energy into. Sure. So you do have more time to devote to the Lord. But we are not back in the Bible days with the way that they courted and stuff like that. Sure. Like a lot of those marriages were arranged, and it was just a different time. And I think churches now are trying to shed more light on what it means to date, and what it means to look for a partner, not just because you're burning and you want to have sex.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I keep going back to my point. What we don't talk about is the individual healing. Hello, everybody has childhood trauma of some sort. The individual, and that's what buy my book when it come out. We'll see soon. The heart work, the soul work, your character. You don't all of a sudden approach that altar, you fall in love, and now you both know how to forgive one another. They're husband and wives that fight like cats and dogs, that disrespect each other, that don't honor their covenant. That stuff, you don't just go to the altar and get that. That is in you and internal work. So that's really what sustains happy marriage. Not just, oh my God, I fall in love and we have money and we look good together on the outside. No. You know, that's not what makes
and a lot of
marriage.
times and there's an idealism that people have, and it's like, oh, I want this, I want these many kids and live here and be in this house, and you know, us to buy this car. I actually saw an Instagram post the other day, and I knew what the post was really saying, like how much this couple had achieved together in their marriage. But when I was watching it, all I saw was that, like, we got married, we bought this big house, we bought a Bentley, then we bought a Lamborghini, then we, you know, and it was just like, okay.
Well,
like,
if that's what the two people, you aligned with the person that mirrored what you wanted.
But I wondered, I just wondered, like, okay, like that's great that you guys acquired all these things together. But when you put that out into the world, you know, I think there's so many messages put out into the world, and you know, I just, like you said, I think there needs to be more of a soul connection between the two people, because walking through life as a couple, making sure you're still in alignment. I know I went to a marriage conference. Well, we went to a marriage conference one time, and the example that they gave were two boats. You know, they say, you know, when you get married, you become one. You know, I can't say that I necessarily agree with that. Like in spirit, I guess, but you are two individual people, and you will forever be two individual people that shared a whole separate life before you guys came together.
That's true.
So when you don't acknowledge the separate lives that you lived and the separate traumas you've been through, and you just say, well, we're one now. It's like, well, you can't just put two people together and expect, when you say you're one, it doesn't mean you're thinking the same, you have the same outlook as the other person. And I think sometimes in church, when they say, well, we're one now, it's like a way to snuff out like the individuality that the other person might have. Like, it's like, well, no, I understand that we're one spiritually because we've made a covenant together.
Correct.
But I also still have a separate personal journey in my life.
For sure.
And so do you.
For sure.
So this example that they gave, where you have two people that are in two boats and they're floating along. And if you're not intentional about your relationship, if you're not intentional about checking in with your partner to see where they're at, how they're evolving in their lives, the two boats that you have that are going like this, the water, after a while, those boats are going to start drifting apart. And you're going to look up one day, and you guys were in these two boats going like this, and then you're going to look up and you guys are going to be this far apart. And it's hard to get those two boats back together, because the way, like the current and the waves of life are drifting you know, too far apart. So I think about that, like when it comes to being in a partnership and in a marriage, I think it's not just about like connecting as far as the dating and like the things that they say, like, oh, you want to keep your marriage hot and, you know, you want to keep the fire lit. Like, yeah, you have to do that. But you also have to be committed to your, like you're saying, your own inner work.
You do.
And then you have to also be supportive of your partner's inner work that they're doing.
True. I think the oneness, kind of to your point, it's oneness of mind, it's oneness of heart, it's oneness of spirit. It doesn't mean you have to agree on everything, but basically when you sacrifice, because it is a sacrifice on both parties, you come together, and how you approach the world is in fact supposed to be an aligned union with, but it goes back to, why did you get married? So you said stability, I said partnership. Well, I can't say that if we were interviewing our, partners, everybody has a different reason. They have a different ideal. Oh, well, some people get married because they just want somebody at home while they go and do this and that.
Right.
Well, that's not an alignment.
Right.
So I think there is a oneness. You can't. And then if you have your stance in some area and these two individuals do, and they can never come together in harmony, that is not oneness, but that is what marriage requires.
Right.
And again, if people were more educated and really knew the honesty about what marriage requires of you to sacrifice, not who you are, not your hopes and dreams and goals, but you are. I mean, there is an element.
Two parts coming
you
together.
can't roll the same as an individual that you do as a married person.
Exactly.
And that's the part I don't think
people understand
or talk about.
Yeah. It's two separate people coming together, like you said, one being one in mind, one in spirit, one in heart.
How you approach
how you approach the world. But also, I feel for me, in my experience with marriage, I didn't feel like I had enough agency to be my own person.
As a wife.
Mm-hmm. I did not. I did not. I felt like I was in his world, trying to figure out where I fit into his world. And I moved to LA to pursue a dream. That's the reason why I moved to LA. I didn't move to LA to get married and settle down and have kids. Now I made the choice to do that, but in my mind, I wanted to be in a partnership where both people, what both people were dreaming and aspiring to, they could fully pursue, and while I could still develop and be myself. And I just didn't, and some of it is not his fault. Like some of it is just it was just where I was and how I was growing. And I wasn't giving myself enough, it's like I didn't have enough confidence in myself to even express like some of the ways that I didn't feel like I was able to be myself, if that makes sense.
100% makes sense. And again, with all the work that I've done and my life experience, everything in life has seasons. And I love marriage, but I do not believe, one, that everybody needs to be married. Two, at least for my relationship, the timing of our lives was such that we should have waited a little longer.
Yes.
Because if you give, one of my friends says, we give Jackson's 13 years old, we give him some keys to a car. He don't know how to drive it. He is not matured.
But one day
and
he
evolved.
will.
So I think with marriage too, why did the person get married and what season of life are you in? Can you sustain what a marriage requires? Do you even desire that? I think we get pressured a lot of times to get married and we just haven't evolved. Or maybe one partner's in one season of life and they want to be more settled. One wants to go pursue their dreams. Well, guess what? There's going to be a friction, misalignment in somewhere.
And a pulling. There's going to be a pulling in one direction.
Which is fine. Like if one partner has to sacrifice, but again, that's the beauty to your point earlier about the ebbs and flows and those two boats constantly coming together and making it a priority to stay on the same wavelength, literally.
Right.
So the waves are moving you at the same current, as opposed to like, I'm trying to pin you, you're a kite, and I'm trying to pin you down and you want to fly. And that's unfortunately, a lot of couples dynamics.
Yeah. The other thing I learned in therapy is that marriage is a mirror.
Oh yeah.
And
it is.
I think a lot of times both people are kind of mirroring similar things, and they're hurting each other, and one partner might feel more justified, oh, you did this or you did that, but they're literally doing the same thing to one another, but in completely different ways. And certain things are more acceptable from society than other people. But I think if people realized that, and we say this all the time, it takes two, it takes two to make a thing go right. It takes two for it to end and fall apart as well. Yeah. Just more ownership in the marriage. When you're going into a marriage or when you're in a marriage, both people taking more ownership of the direction that the marriage is going. Yeah. And not saying, well, if you would do blah, 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 then we would. And it's like, well, no,
Well, again, it goes back to the work. And I think
Right.
people talk about like trauma bonds. I also believe that there's such a thing called trauma compatibility. So when you partner with someone, again, alignment, it doesn't mean two people are perfect. I do not coach or live my life in a way where someone has to be fully healed or all the way perfect before you get married.
Right.
But if you find someone in that love and that safety and you can show up and be yourself, hey, neither person's perfect, but the environment is safe enough where we can grow and heal at the same time. So I never want to put that message out like, you got to be all the way on the finish line. No.
Right.
But if if I understand you, like for instance, anger is a big one that people like to harp on. Some partner might outwardly have outbursts, but guess what? If I'm harboring anger with a bitter, hardened heart, that doesn't make you worse or me worse. We both are struggling
in
but
the
it
area.
shows up different.
Yeah, it's like mine just, I
That was
yell
me.
and cuss,
And
and then the other person keeps
It's
it
like,
inside.
"Rah!
Right.
I hate her."
Right, or he has a smile on their face, but it's super condescending. Like,
Yeah,
it's like,
just
well,
mean. Just down on plain mean.
It's like, okay,
Just mean.
you're just a little more covert in your
Correct.
anger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For
sure.
I also think too, when I was married, I didn't necessarily feel, and it's probably because we were, my ex-husband was a pastor, and I was a first lady, and I don't even believe in that term. Like, I don't believe in it. I think the first lady is whoever is married to the president. Like, I think it's like the black church has created this hierarchy, and I understand it because coming from slavery, that was the only place that Black men were celebrated and elevated was in the Black church. So the whole pastor and first lady and elevate, I totally get that.
Sure.
But nowadays, I don't think there's a place for it, and that's a whole nother podcast episode.
Is. Want the saints mad. We honor.
Right, we
thee.
are, of course, but I mean,
No, but it's a lot of pressure that goes with that.
yeah, it's
I
a lot
agree.
of pressure
on the
it's a lot of
first
pressure
ladies.
that goes with it. I don't think people are honest about what it feels like to be a wife and a mother, or even if you're not a mother, just to be a wife. I don't think women are talking about it the way that they should and being honest with other women, especially ones that are aspiring to get married, to be wives and get married, and I think for me, there was just a lot of pressure to have like this relationship where everybody else could come to us to get advice or to be encouraged. But we were not open as we should have been with other people about the issues and struggles that we were having. And sometimes I felt like I was the only person in the marriage that was having the struggle, like struggling with certain things. You know what I mean? Like, and I hope that when people do get married, there can just be more of an honesty about what it's like, and how it feels, and that it doesn't feel good all the time.
No, it doesn't.
And that you do change in certain ways, and just having a community that will embrace you when you're like, ooh, I'm struggling in my mind with this.
Well, and I think also what I wish was talked about more is just that grace is okay. Like we have so many messages and are fed like happiness and butterflies are always going to be there, but I don't think there's enough messaging that allows for people who are married to go through seasons of struggle and it be okay, or to consciously decide we don't want to be married anymore.
Right.
It has to be some shameful thing. And I'm like, no, because guess what? Maybe we didn't get married for the right reason in the first place. So I just wish that more people embraced that truth, to your point, and not felt like they had to wear a mask, to maintain. Getting married doesn't make you the perfect relationship wisest person, especially when you got a hardened heart, or you're not being your authentic self, or you've set up a whole nother situation. Like that does not, people compare. That's another thing. Nobody's marriage looks like nobody else's. So I don't like that part. I never treat each couple the same because you both come into the relationship with different backgrounds and hurts and, histories. So, yeah.
So I truly, I guess I say this sarcastically, but I admire people that can keep a mask on forever. I don't know how they do it. I kind of tried, because you do feel this pressure to, like I said, my parents have been married for 43 years. I have seen them go through a lot of different things in their lives, and they're still going strong. And I love my parents, and I'm happy that they they did that.
Yeah.
And I don't think my parents wear masks. That's one thing about my parents. Like, they have gone through a lot in their marriage, but neither one of them wear a mask.
Oh,
So,
at all. Hey,
don't
I
know.
love
Like,
them so
right.
much. They sure don't.
Nobody.
At all.
You're like, ooh.
Hence why they've created beautiful
right.
children that also don't.
Right.
Don't play.
And I feel, I wish that, what I can say I regret in how I navigated my marriage is, I wish I could have been a little more honest with my partner about how I was feeling in certain areas.
Sure.
I think because I saw my parents kind of just push through things, I was just like, okay, no, I'm just gonna push through this thing,
Yeah.
And because I wasn't mature enough at that time to like be honest and face certain issues I was having and just ways that I was unhappy.
Sure.
I think we weren't able to part in a way that didn't involve, a little bit of drama and shame and stuff like that. And, I can take that on the chin.
Yeah.
I wish that I could have been in a place where I could have said, hey, this is not working for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I still don't know if it would have been any less heartbreaking.
Well, I think it would, again, when you're honest, and that's what real partnership is. We think about what the Bible talks about, with marriage. When we make mistakes, God loves us regardless. And I also, in talking about divorce, I was thinking, I said, Lord, I don't want to be out here as a poster child for people to break up, because there's beauty in sticking it through. Yeah. But are you sticking it through in an honest way? Right. And it doesn't mean that, one partner's happy that the other, it's not about happiness. Yeah. But if you are not being honest and your truth about your experience in the union, then those two boats will in fact start doing that. So it's just about being honest and as a unit coming together to deal with those things. One partner should not be lonely in a marriage, or they shouldn't be isolated, or, Right. That's deeper. And I don't want to go too far.
In my mind, it was like, you don't break up. Like, once you get married, when I got married,
it is for the Christians.
I never saw myself getting divorced. Like, that is the truth. Like, I never thought, like, 12 years later, I'm going to be divorced, starting my whole life over at 39, 40 years old with 2 kids. Like, I never in a million years thought that, it was just like, you figure it out. You keep going. But
and people do.
I think for me, I felt boxed in, and I am a massive person. Like, there's so many different sides to me, and the dreams that I have and my personality, and like, I just felt like I was boxed in to a certain type of life and expected to behave in a certain, kind of way. And when I was questioning so much about who I was and what I wanted, I didn't feel like I had an outlet to be able to, express those things. And I just needed freedom I needed to be free to explore those things. And I feel like I needed a partner that would not be afraid of me exploring parts of myself so for instance, this is a little thing. Me and my ex-husband known each other since we were 14 years old. When I was, 18, we were talking about getting body piercings and stuff. At that time in our lives, we were heavy in church and stuff like that. And I was like, oh no, like, I don't want no body piercing. Like, whatever. I was like, I'm not into that, whatever. Well, when I turned 24, I changed my mind. I got my belly button pierced because I changed my mind. Yeah. Because I grew up, or because I was experiencing new things. I'm a free spirit, And so when we got back together, he was like, you got your belly button pierced? And I was like, yeah. Like, you know, and he's like, oh, wow. Like the Danielle I knew would have never pierced her belly.
Gosh, as a teenager. But
Right.
that's the thing, Danielle, the seasons change.
Exactly. So these were little moments, and this is not a downer on him at all. Like he is who he is. But I wish at that time, this is before we got married, those were the little things that I feel like I ignored. You know?
Well, I think even taking the people out of it, there's a lot of ebbs and flows and seasons. For instance, you can meet a woman that says, oh, I want to be a housewife and I want to just raise kids. And then you catch them 10, 15 years later and now they're an entrepreneur and they want to, that doesn't make them wrong.
Right.
It's a new season.
So
it takes the partners, one, to be honest and to always stay, again, committed to the commitment.
Yes.
And I just think that more people need to do that. It doesn't make him wrong, to your point, because we're talking about you guys were kids, but you also admit it too. Like, well, you weren't always comfortable, to be honest, but it never, I think what I think stands out for me is that people are either afraid or don't know how the partner will handle the truth.
Exactly.
And so it perpetuates that. So then again, anything done in like falseness or someone's feeling like they can't be true, it's going to have an expiration date.
Right. So for me, I think all of those things were building up over the years. And I was struggling personally and didn't necessarily have an outlet for expressing, you know, those things and kind of feeling boxed in or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
and you were first lady.
Yes. So when we separated, that was the first time in my, even though that was the scariest, like it was the scariest time of my life, but it was a very necessary time of my life. I feel like God gave me an opportunity, number one, to be my 100% authentic self, or start the journey in
walking
becoming
in who that is.
My authentic self. And a lot of times that can happen through exposure. Like the things that you hide, the things you're doing where you're not being honest, you're not being 100%.
Yeah. Because
God loves you so much, and because of his grace, because of God's grace, he will expose you.
Yeah, you'll be set free. Maybe not the way you want to be.
The truth will set you free.
Yeah.
Like the truth will set you free. Sometimes you got to get busted out for the truth to set you free.
Yeah.
You know? And so I thank God for the exposure so that I could be free of the things I was holding on to or holding in.
Yeah.
And I had an opportunity to start anew.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it was a blessing for both of us.
Yeah.
I don't know how he feels about it completely, but it was a blessing for both of us. And us separating was the scariest thing in my life. I felt so much shame. I was, went from living with my parents to living with my Nana to living with my sister-in-law, Coley, for a little bit, to living with a husband. I had never been on my own completely. And I was afraid, and I felt isolated, alone because of the situation. But the more I was alone, the more I got to embrace being alone. Yeah. And I found a joy in it. Yeah. And I found my independence for the first time in my life. I had never, I'm getting emotional.
Okay, I got it. I mean, because nobody's talked about it, especially not publicly.
I finally felt like I had an opportunity to have independence. I've never felt that. I never felt that way all through my life. But when we separated, I got my own place. Little things like going to the store and picking out my own furniture was like a huge milestone for me, Because when I was married, I wasn't the breadwinner. I was a struggling actress,
I know. I know. I want to say something, and I hope that it encourages people. We are socialized, and again, taking the people out of it to believe that there's a lot of unspoken expectations,
Yes.
and why these tears are coming. I got to witness that. And so the sad part is really good people who really love each other get married, but they might bring a dynamic, or there might be a dynamic cultivated between the two coming together
Right.
that you can't see that you're perpetuating.
Right.
Where one partner feels so stifled, they
Right.
feel like a caged bird. That's
Right.
a lot of couples experience.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make him bad or you
No,
bad,
yeah.
but the fact that these tears are coming, because now, and it doesn't mean that couples can't go through what you guys been through and still
And
stay
still-
married.
yeah, they can.
Every relationship is different.
Yeah.
And just like marriage is a choice, so is divorce.
Right.
So it doesn't make anything good or bad. It's just your story and what
Exactly.
you had to learn.
Right.
For sure.
So yeah, I think just not feeling agency in while I was married.
Sure.
When we separated, I got a chance. It's very interesting the way God, the timing of things. We were married all those years, and I was a struggling actress, of course, and I booked one, my first big role while we were married, and then right after we separated, I ended up getting another, lead role on a show, and so I actually had the means to take care of myself, because if this would have happened a year or two prior, I would have probably had to move back to Sacramento and stay with my parents and, take my kids, and it would have been just
Different.
it would have been different.
outcome.
And so I think that's why I say God's grace is an amazing thing, because a situation that seems terrible, that, people will tell you, divorce is the worst thing ever, and God is not going to honor, this and that.
Yes, he does.
If you divorce, but God took care of me.
He did.
He provided for me during that time. And, I think going through, navigating through the shame of it all, the fact that God took care of me and provided for me, it helped me, get through, that time. And when I say I'm happily divorced, that's not a dig to Kelvin at all.
No.
But I found myself through my divorce. I got a chance to really fall in love with myself, and to forgive myself, and to own who I am. And I'm still on a journey of doing that.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful that we went through that separation. And at the time, I was wanted to reconcile, because the only thing in my mind is that you're not supposed to get divorced. You're supposed to fight to the end.
Yeah.
And the longer we were separated, the more I realized this, I'm not sure whether I want to be married,
Yeah.
And that was a very hard discovery to make, because you spent over a decade being married,
but you don't just hold, that's the kind of bringing back to my point. You don't just hold the title of husband and wife and then you just go through life and everybody's happy, fulfilled, and the marriage thrives. It's a living, thriving union.
Yeah.
And so I know for me, I could say, I don't know that I ever said divorce is not an option. And I always admire, you guys said that early on, the D word, we don't even say the D word. Well, I do. And my parents did 2 and 3 times. So that's just, I never thought that. But had I have done the internal work, like going through divorce, I felt guilty. I felt shame, because you get judged, unfortunately.
Yes, very
and
much.
thank God, like I said, I give props to my ex-husband for sure. But if I would have done the internal work, I do work on myself, but there's a certain grace and compassion that you learn to be able to sustain a lifelong commitment to someone. And I just didn't even as a therapist, even as a coach, it's like we still human.
Right.
We still have work to do. We still have conditioning.
Right.
But I don't think I would have, I could see my situation differently. I don't think I regretted it at all. I don't regret it, but I learned so much. And now I show up in a much more softer way. I mean, I'm on my journey, as we all are. But yeah, I don't judge. I never counsel any couple the same, and I don't view there's couples, like I said, that have been able to sustain, you know, all types, drugs, infidelity.
Right.
I've seen couples, two in particular that I've worked with, got divorced and got remarried.
Yeah.
So love, that's why I love love and I love relationships so much, because
Yeah.
it's really just about two individuals that are like gonna fight for the commitment, but also work on themselves.
Fight
not
for
just
themselves,
not just stay the same. You can't stay the same.
I'm like, in order to not betray other people, you can't be betraying yourself.
Correct.
And then think you won't betray
Correct.
someone else.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
You're
And
growing and
betrayal is
evolving.
not just cheating or infidelity or whatever.
Yeah.
We betray ourselves in so many, different ways.
Yeah.
So how, I guess I want to ask you, like, how do you know when it's time to let go? Like, what were some indicators for you that it was time to let go of your marriage?
I'm gonna cry. I'm just kidding. You know, well, I do. I feel the tears welling up because, even now talking about it, I still love my ex-husband in a way where I believe in him and I want him to thrive and be happy.
Yeah.
But I think I knew being single so long, I know myself so well that there were so many moments where I knew I should have waited. We got engaged too quick. We did. And there were several people, you being one of them. There was 3 in particular that had no qualms in sitting me down like, you sure you want to do this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, it takes faith. You got to believe. But the truth is, we should have waited. And, I won't even get into it, but what I do know is I was not able to be my full self. I think, again, family conditioning plays a part. And so when you grow up and you see marriage modeled for you in a certain way, and again, I already told you, I love my parents so much. I come from them, but I was never a person that didn't want to say the D word. So it's like when you are patterned and fashioned in a way, I think it just was a misalignment in terms of like why we got married. And I think within the marriage, what the roles looked like. And I just think we were 2 wonderful people that just didn't align. We could never come to that oneness in terms of creating a oneness. It was always kind of like, you feel this way, I feel this way. You handle things this way, I handle this, and not that couldn't have lasted, but because of what I'm called to do and, in my walk, and I'm so clear about that, I felt like it was inauthentic for me. So I'm not an actor, so I can't show up one way and then counsel couples and individuals to live free and authentic, but then I wasn't feeling as free and authentic. I felt like I couldn't be me and be loved and accepted. I kind of had to be a little, try to be, and no slight to him at all, but that's how I felt.
Right.
That's how I felt.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then, how did you manage the shame of divorce?
Tears, honey. I just cried that thing out. I prayed, I cried. No, seriously, I prayed, I cried, and then I was very intentional with how I navigated it. So I made sure to never badmouth my ex-husband. He and I have to keep giving him props because, divorce is not easy, but I think the Christian, and I am an unapologetic Christian. However, it taught me a lot about, there's a lot of unhappily married Christians out there. And I said, well, Lord, I felt he answers prayer, and I am a prayer warrior to the day I die. And I prayed about it so long, and there were so many milestone moments where I laid my head down and I knew, I'm like, man, and I would try to, speak my truth and try to say, and then you deal with the guilt of people saying, well, you don't get married to divorce. Well, no, you don't. Right. But I knew in my heart, there was several kind of moments prior to where I should have just paused and just took a little more time, and I didn't.
Right.
So I felt like I just felt that God answered my prayer, and I knew when it was that time where it started to kind of spill over into how I showed up in what I was doing and just my life, and I felt like slowly but surely I was kind of sinking into quicksand, and I just couldn't see a way out at that time.
Yeah, I mean, when you were going through that, we were on our hiatus, our friendship hiatus.
Yeah, I know.
Hiatus. So by the time we reconciled or whatever, you guys were already divorced, and but I do still feel like, like you said, I was honest about how I felt about it, and I think it was for us, it was like, okay, not that we had a lot of other things in common, but I think we were able to kind of
connect on that
and be there for one another.
For sure.
While navigating a brand new life.
Yeah,
you know?
and starting anew. And I think that's
starting
what truth does. And that's exactly why you can divorce with grace. And I'm not,
Right.
again, I'm not trying to tell couples out there that are not, listen, get to some therapy, coaching, counsel, something. You can't just go at it and somebody's hiding. But I think, to your point, God's grace. Like once you know if this is the path that I'm going to take or that my spouse and I are going to take, there is grace there for the children. There is grace there for you to start anew and to do. And that's probably what brought some of those couples back, because time and season and healing and growth can in fact make you better and happier.
The thing for you, I mean, you guys didn't have any kids.
We did
so, you know, that part of it, you know, it's more tricky for those of us who are divorcing and there's children involved.
Yeah, you got to.
You know, it makes things a little bit more difficult. But I will say one thing is when one person wants to divorce and the other person doesn't want to divorce. That also makes things.
Well, that was my case too, a little.
Right. It makes things hard. You know, it's like, because, and I think that brings, like, there's a guilt to it. Like, even if you are doing it for the right reason, or you didn't do anything, you know, you didn't cheat, you didn't whatever, but you just don't want to be in a relationship anymore. And the other person is like not moving, you know, it's harder for them to move on.
But that was my guilt, because I do honor that. I think, and honestly, that's what I do. I can say I love a person that has those traditional old-fashioned and biblical values, but that wasn't my rearing and that wasn't my upbringing. So the guilt and the shame was like, well, what's wrong with me? Like, well, why can't I just, I mean, and it's funny, I'm loyal to the day. It's like, you know who you are, and I know I'm loyal. But again, I believe I got married for not all the right reasons in not the right season. Right. Had we have waited or had, you know, or
had more time.
More time, or just to realize, hey, maybe this isn't our best path at this time.
Right. Yeah.
But I believe.
I remember being in my apartment and just being like, Lord, like just praying, like, why, like what? I remember having that same conversation with myself, like, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Like, why can't I, like, help me to be able to love properly? Because something is wrong with me. Like, that's
Well, no,
that is how I felt. Like,
we love how we either were loved or how we saw it. We
like,
make it up as we go.
So difficult. Like, you know, why is my path when it comes to relationships or whatever? You know, that's how I felt at that time. Like, why is my path so difficult? Like, why can't I get it right?
It's
type
not
of
just
thing.
you.
You
It's
know?
not just you.
And I learned later. You know, I learned later. Like, these are all these experiences that we have. It's really just a path to get back to self, you know, like to get back to who it is God authentically created you to be, how he created you to show up in the world, you know?
Yeah. And it's for mature audiences only. I don't advocate that people just get married just for the look of it. It takes maturity to show up and forgive, to show up and really sacrifice self, or say, hey, we're going to align in how we operate in the world. It takes maturity to do that, and it takes, you know, pliability. You always have to ebb and flow with your partner, and some people do not. They're not willing. They want their partner to be what they want them to be, how they want them to be it, and there's such rigidity there, and that is kind of where I come in. Holla at me, y'all, if you need a little coaching through it.
But I will say I am happy. Like, I'm happy in my life. I have my challenges, of course. You know, we all do. My life is completely different than it was 4 years ago, which is sometimes very surreal to me, you know? Yeah. But I feel like I'm more mature. I'm coming into who I am in this season of my life. I'm proud of who I am. I'm a great mother. Like, I feel like I'm a better mother in this season of my life than I was, because I was just dealing with so much turmoil that I wasn't present. Like, it was hard for me to be present sometimes because I was just, the anxiety and the holding on, you know, holding things and all that. And now I'm just, I don't know, I just feel freer, you know? And so I'm grateful for my divorce, you know? I'm grateful for my ex-husband. I think he is a great person. He's a fantastic dad. we're trying to figure out this co-parenting thing, and
Yeah.
lately it has been going pretty good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Shout
Mr.
out to
Truitt.
Kel. We love you. We love you. No, seriously.
And you know, it just takes time. We only been divorced. I mean, officially divorced just a couple years. You know, and so I think that's something to remember too. Like over time, if you are going through a divorce, if you are figuring out where it is, you know, do I want to stay married? Do I not? You know, there's a lot of gloom and doom that hangs over getting divorced. There's statistics like your life will never be prosperous after you divorce. I mean, there's so many things I read, you know, that it will scare you into staying in a marriage and unhappy, you know. But I think just know, whether you are a spiritual person or not, I just think there is something to being authentic, you know.
Yeah.
And your life is going to go in the right direction once you start doing that.
That is the only way.
That's the only way.
Why would you not be?
But people, they don't know.
I know.
Don't know that they can be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Well, you want to
there's
partner
a
with
fear
someone
there.
who allows you to be. And
Right.
that goes back to
Exactly.
getting married for the right reason.
Exactly.
And partnering with someone that is aligned with you.
Right. Right.
That is where the patience needs to be on the front end.
Right.
And then, of course, for those people that do, I have so much honor and I love couples that just stick it out. There's beauty in that.
Yeah.
That wasn't my story, but I desire it. I'm not dead. Hell, I'm young.
Exactly.
I'm not dead. Hello.
Right.
You know,
that is what I desire. For sure.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
desire somebody. I want a partnership. I don't want a parentalship. Where I feel like my husband is my daddy. Like I have a dad, and I was a child once.
Yeah.
And I want to be a co-partner with someone where we are, you know, both encouraging one another to be our best selves, and the insecurity of, are you going to fly away from me?
Yeah.
is not there.
Can I
It's
do
like,
a shameless plug?
Yes,
I'm like,
sure.
well, Eve Marie and I, we did write a
Yes.
couples workbook called Souls Connected. And
Yes.
so I really want to encourage you all to get it, soulsconnected.org, because, and I'll tell you, that is what inspired it.
Yeah.
So Eve Marie and I, that's my business partner. Shout out to Eve Marie. We wrote a couples workbook for that specific intention. It's asking the right questions. It's 8 chapters, and it covers all the topics that between the two of us were laid on our hearts. She has had several years of marriage, and I had several years of dating, and that's something that she didn't have.
Right.
So it just is a beautiful infusion. We talk about everything from love, emotional intelligence, sex, intimacy, faith, all of those things, and it allows couples to journey through that workbook so that you know who you're partnering with. And it's not even just marriage. Some people don't even, marriage, life, partnership is kind of what
business,
the,
everything.
exactly. So it's designed in a way to help navigate that process, because some people don't know where to start. They don't know what to ask. So that's kind of our little seed to help couples be sure when they
Quickly, before we end,
Yeah.
would you do it again?
Of course.
You get
which
married
part?
again?
Oh, absolutely. I would. I will. I desire that. I
Good.
love partnership. I'll say do what? But I did the drop for Soul Connected. No, I would. And I'm hesitant to say that. I would get married again.
Yes.
I desire, my heart desires that.
I would get married again, too.
I
do
desire
not
that.
want to get divorced again.
I don't either.
It was the worst experience of my entire life.
Yeah, it was
I
hard.
don't ever
for
want
me
to get divorced again, but I would try again at marriage. So
I would too. And I'm even more passionate about other people marrying right, or doing the work that it takes to sustain the marriage you do have. I'm even more passionate about that than getting married again, but I do desire that. So whoever can accept all this
all this, baby.
All
Thank
this
you
stuff.
so much for tuning
I'm just
in
kidding.
to all the women I've been. Like, subscribe, share, and be encouraged.
Yes. Get married at the right time. Stay married if you really want to. And don't if you don't. I'm just playing. I'm joking. God, I want to joke.
All the women